My mediations tend to be child-centered. We focus very much every aspect of what's happening, whether it's a divorce or parties who have separated, that we put the children first. How are we going to do what's best, what's in the best interest of the children? And it involves a lot of long-term planning. Many times parties are not thinking about the long term. What's going to happen, let's say, for the next 10, 15 years of co-parenting? Because people often come to a mediation very angry. They want to be heard. They want their day in court, so to speak. But in mediation, we're able to really discuss all the aspects of the separation, of the divorce, and how it's affecting the children.
I'm Rachel Green, divorce mediator and collaborative attorney. Join me as I chat about everything from smoothly navigating your way through divorce to prenups, all the while keeping the kids in mind. Welcome to Keep the Kids in Mind. Today, I am really looking forward to speaking with Mary Telemaque. She is the founder of Telemaque Solutions. Her 40-year career in family law spans from child protective services to nearly 2 decades as a family and divorce attorney. And now she has made the journey from traditional law to being a family and divorce mediator. Go, Mary. She has dedicated her practice to helping families navigate separation, divorce, and parenting disputes through mediation by promoting resolution with clarity, dignity, and less litigation. And that will help families keep the kids in mind. So welcome, Mary.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Rachel, for having me.
So what brought you to this work? You started in child protective services, so I'm sure the plight of children in high conflict families is how you started out, yes?
Absolutely. My career with Child Protective Services started in 1986. I did not even see myself going there because it's not what I studied in college. But being in family court and seeing all the families come in, I investigated specifically child sex abuse. And I was in contact with a lot of attorneys because I had to testify in family court and sometimes criminal court following my investigations.
What function did you have that you were encountering these families?
What would happen is that when a report came in of alleged neglect or abuse, it would come to a unit. I was in a specialized unit in Manhattan, and that unit investigated cases that came in from all 5 boroughs. So I would go out and investigate whether or not the allegations were true or not true. If the case was founded, I had to immediately remove the child and seek foster care, and then prepare the case for what's called an Article 10 proceeding in family court.
You would be testifying in family court about what you saw and the conversations you had, and I see. Wow.
Exactly. And if it was if there were criminal charges filed, then I would testify before the grand jury.
Wow. Yeah. That's intense.
Very, very. Yeah. But believe it or not, the reason that I even went to Child Protective Services is because I'm multilingual. At the time, they were seeking Spanish-speaking investigators. So that was the reason I went to, at the time it was called Bureau of Child Welfare, BCW.
Yeah. And then some years later, you decided to go to law school?
Yes. While working at CPS, I actually applied to law school. I had about 6 judges that actually recommended me to attend law school. So when I started law school, I was still working as a child protective service worker.
Wow.
And then shortly thereafter, I just took a leave of absence so that I can focus on studying. And then I did an internship, working for the Corporation Counsel while I was in law school.
When did you go into private practice?
I went into private practice in 1995. I started out as a general practitioner, really serving the community in which I grew up in. I had my practice here in Cambria Heights. Before moving on, I later moved my office to Manhattan, but I still continue to have ties to my community through, different volunteer work and so forth.
So then you were a family and divorce litigator.
Litigator, yes.
And did you still have a specialty in families with high conflict?
Yes, particularly because I'm currently on the panel of mediators across New York State, from Albany to Staten Island. So I am on various panels, New York City, New York State, as well as Supreme Court for divorces. And knowing my background, the people who are signing the cases, they know
Oh,
that I'm a former litigator. So
they go,
I
oh, this is
generally get
horrible. Let's give it to Mary.
exactly. So that's what happens, which keeps me quite busy, not just because of the high conflict, but because of my language background. I speak 6 languages. So, um,
Wow.
so there were, for example, like I would think like 80% of my cases are non-English speaking litigants. You need to have a particular language skills in whatever language you're mediating in, because what happens like in some cultures, I mean, some of the legal language that we use, here in the United States does not exist in other countries, such as family
Interesting.
court. There's no such
Right.
thing.
So what other languages do you speak in addition to Spanish?
My native languages are French and Haitian Creole. Obviously, I speak English, Spanish, Portuguese, and Italian.
I've had clients who English is not their first language. And then I find it's almost like there's two languages, because there's the
Yes.
legalese and there's the English.
Yes.
And they're different. So it sounds like you are aware of that. You have to be explaining the legalese at the same time that you're also translating. It must be very challenging and yet very worthwhile. I've had a couple of mediations where I found myself wondering where we didn't have another translator, and I was relying on one spouse or one partner to translate for the other person. And I started feeling like, I'm not sure I trust this because they're not a neutral person.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's why I can tell you that, I give you a prime example. I had a mediation yesterday where one of the parties' native language is Spanish, but the petitioner who filed it understands Spanish, but she is not fluent. She's not conversational. So in a case like that, I asked the court to appoint an interpreter because I don't want to be seen as being partial to the English speaking party or translating between them, because it makes a difference. I think the optics is critical in mediation.
Yes.
One party might think that you're being partial to the other party because you're speaking to the one party in a language that not both parties understand.
Right. And so do you find that having a translator can help balance the
It does balance,
communication?
absolutely.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think that the fact that I am bilingual and multilingual, parties have expressed to me how they appreciate being able to have the entire mediation in their native language without having any intermediary or third party. Because even with the translation, it can be, I guess, rather challenging because parties, they have to wait for the interpretation before going on. So it makes the process a lot longer. And you're not really having a conversation per se. You're having a conversation, but then you're not, because you have to stop at every point for the
Right.
interpreter to
Yeah.
interpret.
I find that slowing things down in mediation is never a bad thing. People are processing stuff and trying to make decisions, and it's hard to even think on your feet. It's so cutting to the bone of the meaning of their lives. Taking a little longer to process, it never hurts.
Sometimes it's that parties, like, they could be in mid thought and really forget, or lose their train of thought, because of having to wait for the interpreter.
Do you mediate at the court or do they come to your office?
Well, since COVID, all mediations have been remote. Everything is on Zoom.
Oh,
Prior to COVID, well, with the court referred mediations, it had to be done at the court. So, but now, 100% of my cases are mediated remotely, which
mm,
I really love. And I think the parties love that too, because, it cuts down on travel time, right? Um, I could do a lot more mediations remotely in one day than if I had to actually travel.
that's
And
true.
it's impossible for me to really travel with the range of the cases that I handle from Albany to Staten Island. I mean,
Oh,
I
yeah,
will be on
that's
the road constantly.
and I guess also with families where there's high conflict. It's nice
Exactly.
that the parties are not in the room because I remember pre-COVID when there was intimate partner violence,
Yes.
we had to put all kinds of protections in place. And I would always try to have the victim leave first so that the abuser didn't follow them out and make them pay for the things they
Hmm.
said
Yeah.
if the abuser was not happy. And it was always very stressful. And Zoom has fix that problem completely, because if somebody is not happy with what's going on, they can just leave the Zoom. You can't punch someone over Zoom.
That's for sure. That's for sure.
Just cut to the bone. That's what it really
Yes,
comes down to.
exactly, exactly. I mean, there's a less, I guess, feeling of being feeling threatened. The parties are in their, uncomfortable spaces, right? So yeah, so that threat element is to some degree non-existent.
Right. And you can have a mediation with somebody when the other person doesn't know where they live.
Exactly.
And, you're but all on Zoom, but that's not where you live,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
yeah. So that's
But
a big advantage of Zoom.
absolutely,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Well, in the
So
last 6 years, I only had one request for an in-person meeting. And I think that was only because that particular party was not technologically inclined and was just concerned, like how effective would a meeting actually be over Zoom?
I've been really surprised at how effective Zoom is. It's really okay as a substitute for being in person. I probably am doing half my mediations in person now. People have been slowly creeping back to more in person. I really find that Zoom, we can get down to the core of what we're talking about just as well.
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Yes. But I think there's more now. Some of the judges, in various courts are asking whether there's a possibility of actually coming in to court. I know that the Ninth Judicial District, Westchester, is starting a pilot program where mediators would attend the preliminary conferences and actually hold some, I guess, somewhat of an initial intake, right there in the courthouse
Hmm.
before the cases actually get referred.
So, do you find that your background as a litigator helps you with mediating?
Almost definitely. Although it took me years really to take off that attorney hat. It was like I had like two people, standing on my shoulders, talking in my ears. Because as a litigator, you are an advocate, right, for a party. So I had this one talking head saying, "Well, Mary, you can't say that. You're the mediator. You can't say that." And then the attorney on one side is saying, "Well, this is what you should be saying. They don't know what this process is. You should be telling them what the law is, and you can't do that." So there was this internal battle that I had for the first few years. Now I've been able to shut down that voice, that attorney voice in my head.
The attorney voice, do you mean that you were almost like a judge? Like you would be thinking, all right, this is what the law is, this is what they should do.
Exactly. This is what they should do. This is what they should be saying. At some point, I was also an arbitrator. So I had to shut down a lot of voices in my
Wow.
head.
So you really were like a judge.
Yeah, 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 exactly. So, but now I'm able to, as a mediator, I'm part of the conversation. I am not merely an observer or the judge, telling them what they should be doing. So, as a mediator, you're part of the conversation and it helps a lot. And I find that the fact that I was a litigator, I can see all sides, even though I'm not giving any legal advice, but I'm able to help them brainstorm as to possible solutions.
Then what made you make the switch to become a mediator?
Okay, well, that's an interesting story.
That's why I asked the question. I knew it would be interesting to hear the answer.
To tell you the truth, I didn't even think of it as a career choice. Although, as a litigator, while I was in Nassau Family Court for many years, had mandatory mediation, for people who had filed for divorce. They
Wow.
had to appear at least once. That was at least, I think, maybe going back maybe about 2 decades. But other than that experience with Nassau matrimonial cases, I was not aware, that divorces and family law cases could be mediated. However, in 2009, I began the process of adopting my daughter. It was an international adoption.
Mhm.
I didn't expect the adoption to come through for possibly maybe 4 or 5 years. And then suddenly, in January of 2010, there was an earthquake in Haiti, and
Mm.
that's where I was adopting from. And because of that earthquake, I became a mother overnight. I mean,
Wow.
literally overnight, because I had only started the adoption process only 4 months before, in September of 2000.
Wow.
So,
Amazing.
yeah, so my baby girl was home by the end of January.
How old was
So
she?
She was about 20, 22 months at the time.
And she had been orphaned?
She was actually in an orphanage. She had been given up at 18 months. I didn't know whether or not she had survived the earthquake.
Yeah.
Generally, the orphanage she was at, they do not accept children, babies or toddlers. So, I mean, I think the youngest child there would have been 5. So
Oh,
she
wow.
had asked the director to keep her in her own home. So she was actually living with the director of the orphanage. So it was like, more of a family style. So in any event, a lot of the buildings around this home actually went down in an earthquake. Hundreds and thousands of people died in January of 2010. I was trying to get to Haiti. I was able to get to Haiti on a mission trip with doctors. So we're going to Haiti. Was in Haiti at the U.S. Embassy for 3 days, sleeping on the floor until I
Oh,
got papers to travel with
right.
her. So I was able to get her humanitarian parole. I had to close my practice, I think, for at least a month until I got situated
Oh,
with
wow.
childcare and all of that. I continued to have my practice, but then it was really obvious at that time that I could not continue my practice in Cambria Heights because I had to get a live-in nanny. The home, actually, this is where my practice was. And then I lived elsewhere, but this was the place where we could live as a family. So I had to move the practice out of the house and move my practice to Manhattan. It worked for a while until I had trials coming up. I'm like, I didn't have weekend childcare. I'm like, what am I going to do? Especially with trials that were starting on a Monday.
And
And
trials, like, just are really, like, more than full-time to prepare for them?
well, to prepare for
I
them,
never did
exactly.
litigation, so that's why I'm asking.
I mean, court on Friday, and the judge is saying, okay, Miss Telemaque, you're putting on your case on Monday. I'm like, oh my goodness, what am I going to do with baby girl Saturday and Sunday? And this went on for about 2 years. And then in 2013, Andrea Vaca with the Vaca Law Group said to me, she goes, Mary, have you ever thought about becoming a mediator? And I'm like, no, I have not. So immediately I looked into it. I was certified by April of 2013. I closed my practice over several months. And then by 2014, I had joined a CDRC in Jamaica, Queens, where I began an internship and volunteering on a regular basis. And I did that for many years as a volunteer mediator.
CDRCs, for our listeners, is Community Dispute Resolution Center.
Resolution centers.
And
Yes.
there's one in every county in the state. And
Yes.
they're there to resolve complaints that are made to the police that the DA declined to prosecute. And it's like a dispute resolution tool that's offered by the state, any New York State resident. And usually the mediators are volunteer mediators. So a lot of us started out in community dispute
Dispute
resolution
resolution.
centers, and that's how we got our first teeth into the
Yes.
mediation. It's a way to have a lot of experience. And I did it for a year and a half, I guess, when I started out mediating at the Brooklyn Mediation Center, which is now called the Peace Institute. It was always very interesting because you just never knew who, it was really like New York City, the diversity of conflicts that people have, the diversity of people who come in, and you just never know what the case will be about and who you'll see. So it's
Exactly.
really a great experience for beginning mediators.
Yes. And in particular, with the community mediation services that I volunteered at in Queens, over 129 languages are spoken in Queens.
Yeah.
So we had a diverse group of people.
Queens is a particularly good center. It's really very active, and yeah.
Yes. Yes, it is.
It's one of the models.
Mm-hmm.
So Andrea Vaca suggested that you get mediation training, and you took the training, and it just made sense for you.
It made sense, exactly. And I have not looked back. I really love what I do. I love being a mediator. I find that I'm able to help parties in a way that makes sense without the prolonged litigation and the costs. And to be honest with you, many people, cannot afford. I mean, the average person, who's litigating in family court, for example, cannot afford a lengthy litigation process because many cases don't go to trial for several years.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. And so do you have any examples of cases that you were particularly proud of? Maybe they started out and you were, oh no, this is such high conflict, they're never going to be able to resolve it, and then they did? Or
Yes, I mean, the thing is there were so many, but I think that I'm particularly proud, with cases that involve, young children, right? Where many times there are cross petitions, by both parties seeking custody, of
Mm.
their children and, for their own reasons. And it's helpful to help the parties understand how it's affecting the children, how it's affecting their families. Generally, my mediations tend to be child centered.
Mm.
We focus very much every aspect of what's happening, whether it's a divorce or parties who have separated, that we put the children first. How are we going to do what's best, what's in the best interest of the children? And it involves a lot of long term planning. Many times parties are not thinking about the long term. What's going to happen, let's say, for the next 10, 15 years of co parenting? Because people often come to a mediation very angry. They want to be heard, they want their day in court, so to speak. But in mediation, we're able to really discuss all the aspects of the separation, of the divorce, and how it's affecting the children, how it's affecting the family in general. I've been very successful in the majority of my cases in coming to a resolution. Even if it's not, let's say, a full resolution, but there's always at least a 90% resolution of the case, and one minor issue left to be litigated, which is often helpful to them and for the court because we're minimizing
The number
the
of
length of
issues.
litigation. Yes,
Yeah.
what's happening. Yeah.
And do you find that parents might be coming in to seeking full custody for reasons of their own, that they're not focused necessarily on how it is impacting the children? Like, it sounds like you have a very component of your work that's educational to
Yes.
parents.
Yes. There's a lot of times I find that when we're at an impasse, it's because parties, they lack information. They don't have the necessary information to make the right decisions, whether it's because they think my child is growing up without me. I want to be an active parent. I don't want to be a weekend mom or a weekend dad. I want to be able to do homework, have them wake up and we have breakfast together. And I think that many times we're able to talk through their views of what it is that they see happening. Like, what is the true reason that they're seeking custody? Many times it's just that there's no communication between the two parents and they don't know how to break that wall. So they figured, well, if I get custody, I can make all the decisions for my child. And then many times it could be one parent filing for custody because they want to be able to travel without having to get permission for a
Mhm.
passport. And
Right.
that happens quite often.
Yeah.
But many times people just, I guess because I deal with, such a culturally diverse group of people. I mean, I find there are reasons um, that I've come to learn, as a mediator that I never thought would be reasons that people would bring a custody petition. For example, in cultures where generally children are raised together, even if their relationship has gone bad. In many cultures, divorce is still taboo. Parties do not get divorced. They stay together for the sake of the children,
Right.
and no matter what. So
Yeah.
many times what's happening is that you have one party, the custodial parent, who's filing for custody because they want the court to force the other parent to be actively involved, to force the parent to take the children on the weekends, especially when you have a case where, let's say, one parent, because of the breakup, they just don't want to have anything to do with their ex, the former partner, or the children. They're like, okay, I don't want to have anything to do with anyone.
Yeah. I've had cases like that where it's just too painful to be
Yes,
around their ex, and are they're still processing so much the pain of the breakup, and the kids just become sort of swept into that whole morass, and then the parents just say, look, I don't want to see your mother, so I'm not going to see you, and
exactly.
I'll just think about other people's kids, but
Exactly.
forget mine.
And it's a very sad situation, but oftentimes, we're able to work it out. The other party, like the non-custodial parent, I don't want to say, mother or father, because it could be either one. Many fathers are the custodial parents. You may have a mother who's not interested, or who is interested, is putting as other priorities.
Yeah.
So I think, I've taken pride in the way that I've been able to provide information in such a way that The mediation is to help them understand one another better and what the other person is actually thinking or going through, like why they're making the decisions that they're making,
And
right?
also help them to understand how their kids are experiencing it.
Exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Would you find that the court would compel a parent to spend time with the children if he or she was not inclined to do so? Because
No,
I've always thought that it would not be in the child's best interests to spend time with a parent who doesn't want to be with them.
well, exactly. But recently I had such a case where surprisingly the court ordered the non-custodial parent to spend more time, but then they were referred to mediation. And mediation resolved the entire case with a full agreement. And then maybe about 2 weeks before they were to return to court to finalize the agreement for the judge to allocute them, right?
Mhm.
I get a message from the custodial parent saying, "What this agreement has fallen apart because he's not keeping up his end of the deal, where he had agreed to pick up the children from school, agreed to spend weekends. He just was not showing up." But the thing is, I think it's because he probably felt that he needed to make this agreement, even though in his heart he knew that he could
He
not.
wants
There was
to,
no way,
he
because
wants to
this
go
was
live up.
somebody who had multiple jobs, right? And it
Yeah.
was impossible to be really hands-on on a regular basis. They had to go back to court and for the judge to make a decision. And I think at that point, the custodial parent was like, listen, I want full custody. And that's it, because it's clear to me now, I guess she had to go through that to realize it's clear to me now that he has no interest in being a parent.
I see.
It's not because maybe the other party's not interested. They just didn't have the capacity.
The capacity, the time, but that's sad
Yeah.
for the kids too.
It is sad. It's sad for the kids because I
Because
think
they
there are
miss
many
their
parents, I
father.
think they can
Yeah.
just come and go,
Right.
but children need consistency,
Right. That's,
stability.
yeah. And it's, it's worse for the father to say that he's going to pick them up for the weekend and not show up.
And not show up.
Yeah. Than
Yeah.
if he doesn't say that.
Yeah. And I think a lot of times people, they don't want to say something like
Yeah.
that. I've
Yeah.
gotten calls after the fact, after I've, we have a full resolution, and come to find out the parent went out, he took a trip out of the country for 3 or 4 weeks. And the mother works on weekends. So she was scrambling, but she had no idea where he was, what happened, and we talk a lot about communication, the importance of having ongoing communication,
Yeah.
between parties, for the benefit of the children.
So it's parent education as well as dispute resolution that you're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. They go hand in hand because I
Yeah.
think with information, people can make better choices.
Well, Mary, you certainly are a wealth of experience about the whole world of dispute resolution in New York State. And it's so interesting to talk to you and hear your experiences. Are there any particular takeaways?
That no matter what happens, no matter the conflict between two adults, that they should always put their children first. The children should be the center of every decision that they make in coming to a final resolution,
Yeah.
about the dissolution of their marriage or dissolution of the family.
They should keep the kids in mind.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the podcast. It's been
Thank you.
really fun talking to you today.
Likewise. Likewise. Thank you so much.